Ακούγομαι? Ωραία. So we have with us Mr. Baptiste Legay. He's the deputy head of the unit in charge of mobility and road transport in DG CLIMA in the European Commission. And Mr. Legay, thank you for being with us to discuss about the future of transportation sector in Europe. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, good morning to everybody, and thanks very much for the opportunity and for the invitation, and I thank very much the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics.
Thank you. You allow me to skip the introduction as we are a little bit behind in schedule and start with our first question. So we often discuss for green transportation electric vehicles, and especially are focusing on cars. On the other hand, it's crucial to recognize that both light-duty and heavy-duty vehicles play a significant role in the decarbonization journey that we have and require to have for achieving a climate-neutral Europe. What strategies has the European Union outlined for the transition and the future for light and heavy-duty vehicles? That's the first question. And the second, in addition, will be, is electrification a one-size-fits-all solution? Or do we need to consider alternative options, such as, for example, technological options like e-fuels, hydrogen, biofuels, etc.? Or all these can be on our table for the future of transportation?
Yeah, thanks very much for these two questions. I think it's very relevant to start by that. And to start with your first question by saying that, first of all, we are driven at the EU level by this objective that we have set ourselves of reaching climate neutrality by 2050. And as part of that, it's very important that the emissions from the transport sector go down, and our modeling says that they have to go down by 90% by 2050 if we are to reach climate neutrality. And in this context, basically, we need all vehicles to contribute, both the light and the heavy-duty vehicles, so the cars and vans on one side and the trucks and buses basically on the other side. We consider at this moment that road transport, so both light and heavy-duty vehicles, represent 21% of the EU's emissions. That would be 15% for the cars and vans and 6% for the heavy-duty vehicles. So this means that this is something significant and that needs to go down. And as a result, we have taken action at the EU level on both the light-duty vehicles and the heavy-duty vehicles. On the light-duty vehicles, there had been some standards that had been in place for a number of years, and very recently there has been a big discussion on basically increasing the ambition of those standards that was concluded by an agreement in April 2023. And basically this agreement says, sets standards that will be reinforced and strengthened compared to the previous framework, but importantly says that all the new cars and vans put on the market by 2035 have to be zero emission at the tailpipe. So this is something that is very significant and that will drive all the effort for the future. And similarly for the heavy-duty vehicles, we have been really discussing that at the EU level, and very recently, I think it was last week, there was a provisional agreement that was reached also on the proposal to strengthen the CO2 standards for the trucks and for the buses. So this is not fully adopted yet, but the political agreement is already there. So this is stable, I would say. And what it basically provides is that the emissions from the heavy-duty vehicles will have to be reduced by 90% by 2040. And there is a specific provision for the city buses, which will have to become basically zero emission a little bit earlier, basically as early as 2035, 100% of the buses will have to be zero emission. So this is really something that is very significant and that will also drive the decrease of emissions. It's part of a wider package. I'm sure we'll come back to that with also EU action that is taken on the infrastructure, on the social aspects, on the innovation, and on the industry side of things. But this framework is in place and it really sets the scene. And let me turn also to your second question, because you were asking, okay, is electrification basically a one-size-fits-all solution? What I would say from our side is that we see from the European Commission that electricity appears to be a key option, if not the main option, for going towards zero-emission vehicles. I mean, we see that it is already very much prominent in the landscape. It's widespread, and we see that by 2022 we had 23% of the new cars which were sold in the EU which were electric, either battery electric or hybrid. So 23% means that the market penetration is already really picking up speed. We see that there is a lot of innovation, a lot of investment that is taking place, and that the technology is mature and is continuing to grow more mature as we speak. So this is something that is relevant for both the light and the heavy duty vehicles. It is really a very important option in the landscape. But the Commission has also always adopted a technology neutral approach, which means that the standards I was describing, they just say that the cars and the vans, etc., have to become zero emission vehicles. We do not specify how. We think that electricity will be very important there, but we do not rule out that there would be other alternative fuels that would contribute. But I think that it's important to stress that some of the alternative fuels may be more suited for certain types of use. So for instance, hydrogen, we see that it could be definitely part of the picture. It was part of our hydrogen strategy from 2020. But for instance, they could be more suited for long distance heavy duty vehicles. We see that synthetic fuels or biofuels could also be part of the picture, but typically we would see that they would be more relevant for sectors that are harder to decarbonize, like aviation or maritime. And in this context, I mean, these are sectors which cannot have access to electrification options. So we have to see how we use each type of fuel for the specific sectors. I hope I'm answering your two questions.
I think, yeah, the idea of decarbonizing the whole transportation sector is crucial, and some sectors also need special take care of the European Union. One major issue is the charging infrastructure, which is the backbone, more or less, of the transition to a more electrified transportation sector. So, what are the plans of the European Union for the development of such infrastructure, especially for light and heavy duty vehicles? And if we have any specific funding schemes regarding this infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks very much. And I fully agree that charging infrastructure is a key element that has to grow in parallel to the deployment of the vehicles. And it is something that is important because people will not buy vehicles if they don't know that the charging infrastructure is also progressing significantly. So this is actually already happening. And at the moment, we have 600,000 publicly accessible charging points in the EU, and 3,000 are in Greece. And this is something that is growing very rapidly. We have seen 50% increase between 2021 and now of this network. So this is something that is really progressing. I was saying 600,000. We have an objective, which is an indicative milestone that we have set for ourselves at the EU level, which is to have 3 million publicly accessible charging points by 2030. So you can see that we are really on track and making progress towards this milestone. At the EU level, we also have a regulation that is the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, or AFIR, that has been agreed in the past years, and that basically requires the member states to deploy these charging infrastructures. That is the case both for the light duty vehicles and for the heavy duty vehicles. And for instance, it specifies that on the what we call the 10T core network, so that means the basically the main road transport communication axis that we have across the EU, we will have to have fast charging stations every 60 kilometers. So that is something that has to be deployed with a number of threshold from 2025 on. So this is really something that will be put in place progressively. And this regulation also provides that there have to be let's say overnight charging station in parking spaces for heavy duty vehicles along those motorways. It also speaks about having recharging points in the urban nodes for delivery vehicles. It also speaks about deploying hydrogen refueling infrastructure, although this will be a little bit later by 2030. So you can see that there is a whole framework in place that shows with a good predictability that this recharging and refueling network will continue continue to be deployed and will be available for the users. So this is something that is very important, of course. And as you were asking the question about the funding, this is also something that has some funding instruments attached to it. At the EU level, one that is very important is the AFIF, so that's the Alternative Fuel Infrastructures Facility. And for the years 2021 to 2023, it was 1.5 billion euros that were available to support precisely the deployment of such charging infrastructure. And many projects have taken place. I think that this is something that we are happy to say that this is we are aiming to continue with this type of funding, and we are thinking right now of an AFIF 2, so to continue with this funding in the coming years. I would also stress that funding at the EU level is one thing, but of course it has to be complemented by funding at the local level, and the action from the local authorities, from the member states, is of course key to deploy the infrastructure and to support that such charging infrastructure is put in place also at the local level.
Thank you very much. If you allow me for the last question to come to our country, to Greece, which has the oldest vehicle fleets, one of the oldest vehicle fleets in Europe, especially in the categories of vans, buses, and heavy-duty vehicles. And more or less, the median age is over 20 years, so it's a very old fleet. So regarding the motivation, we know that the new European standards about these types of vehicles maybe can act as a catalyst. Also, if you add on these, the updated carbon dioxide emission standards. So do you think that all these motivations will help the sector to decarbonize?
Yes, definitely. I mean, as we have already said, the direction of travel is clear at the EU level, and it's been widely accepted. It is also something that is enjoying more and more public support from the general public, we are hearing that more than half of the EU citizens are interested in looking at buying electric vehicles in the future. That's what our Eurobarometer surveys say. So we see that really this is something that is progressing. It is something that has to be accompanied, as I was saying, through infrastructure, through social measures, through a number of industry support measures. But this is already clear. The direction of travel is clear at the EU level. And it means that it can also have an influence on all the member states, including Greece. There might be a different pace between the various member states. But what I think is very important to say is that the standards apply to the manufacturers at the EU level. So it encourages them and it basically forces them to make progress, to innovate, to develop new business models. And we see that this is something that will also create economies of scale and that will drive prices down. And we can already see that this is happening right now. And this is something that will help deploy those solutions across all member states. And I must say, there are many benefits to doing that. And we see that there are many opportunities and strong opportunities associated with the deployment of electric and zero-emission vehicles in general. We see, I mean, that's of course the CO2 emissions and the decarbonization, but also air quality and health, also savings for the users and reductions in the energy imports that the EU has to do. And so that's also something that has to do with the energy independence and savings once again. And we can see that these benefits are all the more valid if you are starting from a fleet that is relatively old, and that you will see that it is an investment, but it will bring some return on investment all the more. So voilà, I think that it's important to stress that this is a transition and that it will also come with very strong opportunities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Legay. Thank you for the insightful discussion. Thank you for the points that you've given us that we'll try to expand during the next session of our conference. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good conference.